All right, so what is going to be next? Quite interesting. You guys see that? Yu Hakusho. Very surprised with that. Okay, throw that there. What? Oh, this is a big one too. Put it like this way. Draw with only shadows. All right, draw with only shadows. Yu Hakusho. Let's do it. Okay, off the bat, this was definitely much more challenging than Steve with music. Since I incorporated Steve with headphones, this one here was more challenging for the simple fact that I'm not used to drawing hands and that type of gesture. That's always been my Achilles heel, and I'm very transparent. I'm not one of those artists who pretend as if like everything that I do is perfect and I have no flaws. Like, no, I'm being very transparent with you. That's always my Achilles heel, are the hands. So I guess it will be my Achilles hands. There's always hands that are always the most difficult aspect for me to illustrate. That's why a lot of times I have the tendency of hiding hands if I can, or if I ball them up in a fist. So much easier to illustrate and to just get the anatomy right compared to hands, right? So my worst nightmare will be to draw Spider-Man. And I believe I have Spider-Man inside of the bag. So if I randomly choose Spider-Man, then I absolutely pick my poison, but I can't back away from it. Another thing too I want to let you guys know is that there are, like, this was the first time when I pulled it out from the container that the first one did not come out the way I wanted to as far as like the topic. So this was my third attempt of pulling out whatever I wanted. So it's not always like the first attempt, this is what I want and I'm gonna stick with it, or the first attempt I have to do it. No. The first attempt, I believe, when I pulled it out from the container, from that one and from the bag, I believe it was Logan Paul and Extremely Angry. It was something along those lines. And I'm like, I'm not in the mood to illustrate Logan Paul because I have a little bit of everything in there. So I got some social media influencers in there as well, so, and celebrities. I'm like, I don't want to draw, because the main reason why I didn't want to draw Logan Paul, I'm not a fan of Logan Paul, nothing against him or whatever, but I already illustrated Steve Fox, so they kind of look similar. So I wanted to bring more diversity, right? So then the second one was Arthur. I'm like, you know, the kids show Arthur, every day when you walking down the street. And then the second theme of that, well, should I say the second part, which is the theme prompt, and it came out as drawing with your opposite hand. Yeah, there's no way I'm gonna do that digitally. It's gonna come out horrific, and I'm not doing that. So the third attempt was this one, which is Yu Hakusho and drawing nothing but shadows. So you can interpret it however you want. If I was to draw this traditionally, then it would be nothing but like shadowy, like dark stuff. But since I'm doing this, with the digital format, with drawing on the computer, I just decided, why not just make illustration out of this? But shadows is going to incorporate the villains of Yu Hakusho. Now, I'm going to be transparent. I'm always transparent. I've never really watched Yu Hakusho growing up. I was watching Rurouni Kenshin, Cowboy Bebop, and Dragon Ball Z. I watched a little bit of Yu Hakusho here and there, but then later on it just stopped. They just stopped running it. So I never really like invested in watching Yu Hakusho. So I'm not really familiar with the characters, right? I know Yusuke is the main character. I did watch the recent stuff on Netflix, things of that nature. And then with the two villains, I know, like, I don't know their names, but I've seen them so much, and I just went with one of the references of showing one of the villains. And then the other one with the shades on, I didn't even look at reference. I just wanted to give my interpretation of that antagonist. So it is what it is. So yeah, going through this drawing process, as you guys can see, I was struggling with the hand. Like the hand, I was going back and forth, and like I just couldn't get it right as far as like his other hand to hold on to his wrist while he has like the gunshot gesture that's pointed out. It just wasn't working. It just was not happening. So I was like, you know what? It is what it is. I'm just gonna have to sacrifice the other hand not being shown, and it's just honestly proceed from there. Another thing too was I decided at first I wasn't gonna have like the other characters in it, like the other villains, I guess. I was still thinking of like, what if I add his crew, right? But I'm like, it says Shadow, so then I was like, you know what? Let me just add Shadow in that interpretation of having the antagonists, like the villains, instead of like the good guys around him. So that's the main reason why I incorporated the extra 2 later on. So once the sketch was complete, that's when I transferred the files from Photoshop to Illustrator. And mind you, I draw with the medium Wacom tablet. It's supposed to be wireless, but then I had this Wacom tablet for so many years, so over time the wireless Bluetooth aspect of it don't work anymore, so I just keep it wired onto my computer. So yeah, so afterwards from Photoshop to Illustrator, that's when I use the mouse. So I do graphic design as well, so it's actually more convenient for me to just do everything with the mouse instead of always using the Wacom tablet. So it goes hand to hand. Then about Adobe Illustrator, the main tool of course is the pen tool. I like using a pen tool, sometimes I don't, sometimes I do. And for this particular illustration, it didn't take that long using a pen tool, surprisingly. Well, it makes sense mainly because there's not a lot of aspects of components of the illustration where I have to stay on the pen tool for a long time. So this was pretty straightforward where there's not too much detail that's going on, so I'm able to just use the anchor point, use the pen tool, flip it around. Should I say flip it around? What am I even saying? Specifically, I'm trying to say where you just have the anchor point. So I always say this, it doesn't need to be perfect in your first attempt to trace over your sketch using a pen tool. Just do what you can, and then once that becomes a shape, then you go back with the direction selection tool to go in there and then fix the anchor points and make it look curvy, make it look straight, to have the perfect shape after you do your first attempt utilizing the pen tool. So that's what I was doing here, and pretty much it wasn't that bad. It was not that bad. And once the pen tool of tracing everything over with the sketch was complete, that's when I added the colors. And the color aspect was pretty straightforward. Now, unlike most of my illustrations, I do everything with one layer. This one I want to do something different with the coloring aspect, so I decided to just have them in different layers. So Yusuke is one layer, the bottom portion where it's the shadow at the bottom left, that one is a different layer, and then the profile view of one of the antagonists on the right hand side, that's a different layer, as well as the guy in the shades as another antagonist. So I did just multiple layers. I don't normally do that, I normally just keep it with one layer, but I wanted to do that just because of the coloring afterwards after this is complete on Adobe Illustrator. So yeah, coloring wasn't too bad, pretty straightforward. I always say, just like what I said in my previous video with drawing Steve with the music headphones and the music notes in the background, always save your color palette. It is a way to work smart, not always working hard. So that's what I utilize with the color palettes that I've saved from my previous files, and I just save, change the file name, but all the presets is still there, as opposed to doing a file new. And once you do file new, now you just start all over with the default color palette swatches that's on Adobe Illustrator. So always, if you saved a lot of stuff, just change the file name, but don't make a new file. So you just overwrite the previous one and keep the settings the way you had it before. So once the coloring process was complete, this is when I transfer the PNG file. Now this one is interesting because I separated the file. So there's one where it's a flattened, where all the colors is already set up and everything is pretty much flat as one PNG. And then I have separate PNGs. So Yusuke with his spirit gun, that's one PNG. The other PNG is the bottom left, and then the other PNG is the profile side view of one of the antagonists, and then the last PNG is the antagonist with the shades. So multiple PNGs, right? So then once I could pretty much have them all separate, I transfer the files onto Premiere, and then I set up the composition, and then I used the one that was a flattened version as a template so I can just set them up accordingly so they can align properly. And then once that's complete, that's when I utilize the color grading and then add the background, blur out the background so that it has more of that depth of field, right? Which is pretty much photography, the depth of field, right? To make things look more three-dimensional. And that was pretty much it. So once everything is assembled, now you guys are gonna see the end product of this Yusuke or Yu Hakusho shadows only. And yeah, this illustration did not take too long because it wasn't that much detail. However, like everything is random, but there will be other aspects on this channel where I will go back into the archive. So any of like old illustrations I've done back in 2009, 2010, 2008, or very, very old, as you can tell, like I've been drawing for a long time. But all the art, some of the archives I'm going to pull from, I'm going to then redraw it in this current time. So stay tuned for that, as well as the randomized illustrations I'm going to be doing in the future. So that's it for the video. I'll see you guys in the next one.